Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Dr. Maggie Wray from Creating Positive Futures Academic Coaching, where we help high school and college students develop the time management, organization, and study skills they need to earn better grades with less stress. And I know for a lot of the high school students that we work with, college is one of the biggest sources of stress, which is why I'm so excited to be back again with you all this year, hosting our annual Your Teen Ready for College conference, where we get to pull in experts in all areas of the college admissions process, talk about the college transition, talk about how to set you up for career success as well. So we're really trying to help everybody navigate what can be a very stressful and chaotic time in your life with a lot less stress, hopefully, and more success along the way. So one of the things that I know a lot of my students really worry about, and also a lot of their parents are stressed about, is this transition from high school classes into college classes. And there's a little bit of a fear that even if they did well in high school, college is a whole different ballgame in terms of the way you need to study, the way you need to manage your time. And there's a little bit of fear around this transition. And so I'm super excited to get a chance today to talk with Thomas Frank. So he's really an expert on this topic. He's going to be talking with us about college hacks and how to get the top organization and productivity strategies put together that students need in order to survive their first semester of classes. If you don't know Thomas, he is a fantastic resource. He's got this awesome YouTube channel with all these really cool videos for students that are very relatable. They're really fun, and they teach a lot of the underlying science and strategies behind why certain strategies can help you be productive, can help you learn more effectively. His website, College Info Geek, is one of the most loved resources for students on how to study. And the YouTube channel has over 1.4 million subscribers now. Congrats, Thomas. That's awesome.
Thank you.
It's so exciting. So if you all have not seen any of his videos, go check them out. You're going to love them. And we're so lucky to have him here with us today. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's my pleasure. I'm excited to talk about this because I love these topics. I could talk about them all day long, and I love a lot of the tips that you share. I know this is way too much for us to try to tackle everything in one little interview. So we're going to just try to cover the highlights here. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the biggest mistakes students are making in that college transition. So going from high school classes to college classes, there's a lot I think that maybe they don't know because they're not there yet. What are the biggest obstacles you see kids running into when it comes to their organization and productivity?
Well, I guess the way that I want to start this out is to clear up what I found to be a misconception when I went into college, because I was that high school kid thinking college classes are going to be like this gigantic, I don't know, Game of Thrones north border wall that I will not be able to climb. The spike in difficulty will be ridiculous, and it's probably going to chew me up and spit me out. And what I realized is, apart from some of the quote unquote weed out classes, like your organic chemistry and stuff like that, which definitely have a difficulty spike from a normal high school class, college classes aren't that much more difficult in terms of workload, in terms of the actual subject matter. College is an extension of high school in those terms, because professors and teachers and educators, people who build curriculums, they understand that for people to learn effectively, there has to be a logical progression of difficulty, a logical progression through the topics that they cover. And, it's very doable. What makes college classes harder is you have a massive reduction in the support structures that you once had in high school, because you no longer have your mom coming upstairs every night asking you, have you done all of your homework? You no longer have teachers who are quite as invested in making sure that you've done everything. For example, and you probably remember this from your college days, a lot of times professors would never even care if you handed in homework or did it. In some classes, the homework actually doesn't contribute to your grade at all. It's just a preparatory stage to the exams, which cover all of your grade, or maybe most of it in addition to a project. So you're really, you're at your own leisure, essentially. And the students who fail are the ones who can't self-regulate. They're the ones who can't set up a schedule for themselves. They can't stay on top of the workload. They can't do it at a medium, moderate pace throughout the entire semester. So they end up with either a huge workload come test time, or they just never learn what they need to learn and they can't handle those tests or final projects. So really, I think that the big thing that students need to realize is if they can set up organizational structures that allow them to replicate the external, the external teachers and the, you know, systems and all that kind of stuff, replicate that in a form where they can do it themselves, they're going to be fine. So this usually means things like having a well put together up-to-date calendar, a to-do list, a note-taking system, some kind of system that will remind you of when you need to do things, what you need to bring with you, where things are, basically just personal organization and productivity. And the great thing about it is once you learn it, it's not going to help you just through college, but it will work the same in the professional world. There's like this I don't know, nice transitional gradient through the stages of high school and college and the professional world. And I think most people don't think it's that way. They think that it's like this huge jump up to college. And then like the real world is also this huge jump into the deep end, and college won't actually prepare you. But if you can take personal responsibility in how you manage yourself and your time and your effort and all of the information you have to deal with, then you're going to be set up for life.
Well, that's, first of all, very reassuring to know that the difficulty level of the concepts, at least, is not jumping so dramatically that you're going to be completely underwater with understanding the material. And I think it's also really important to think about getting those systems set up, because I find a lot of high school students are succeeding despite their systems, not because of them. So you go to college, you really need those, because you can't skate by anymore by cramming everything the night before. If you've only got 2 tests all semester, and you haven't been doing the reading and you haven't been going to class, you're in trouble. That's not going to work anymore, even if it worked for you in high school where you had 15 tests. So I'm curious, you mentioned a lot of different things there. What are maybe some of the basics for a student who maybe doesn't have any systems set up right now, or at least they don't know if they do? Super basics. What could they do to start getting more organized before they get to college in their first semester?
Okay, so let's just run through what I call a basic productivity system. And there's, I think, maybe 4 or 5 elements to it. In my mind, those elements are a task manager, a calendar, a note-taking system of some kind, a file organization system. And this one is split into 2 pieces. There's your digital file organization and then your physical file organization. And then I also include email in there. A lot of people don't care as much about email. I know this because I made a video about email a few months ago, and it was like my worst performing video in years.
Interesting. People should be interested in email though, because it's the bane of people's existence a lot of times, at least as adults. Right?
Well, I think once you get older, you start realizing that, oh, email is this terrible hydra. I cut off one head. There's 2 that will take its place. What do I do? But I think, at least my core YouTube audience is like, email is boring. I don't care about that. So maybe we can touch on email in a little bit. Okay. The one thing I would say about email is they're going to give you university email. Something that I did very early on in my college career is I kept using my own email, because I knew they were going to delete my email from the system once I graduated. And I didn't want to have to email every single person I knew being like, hey, this email's broken. Here's my new one. It's just like changing your phone number. It's a huge pain. So I kind of didn't use that email very much. Let's talk about the more important parts though.
Yes.
So I think probably the most important one, the one that saved my bacon more than anything else in college, my first semester of college, was my calendar. And this really helped me because I immediately went into a part-time job when I started my first semester. And I was working at this campus IT center where I'd help people fix their computers and had to reset passwords and remove viruses sometimes. And they had a really weird way of scheduling the employees. Instead of giving everyone like a set schedule or doing something like Target or Walmart, like when I was in high school, I worked at Target and they would just give me a new schedule every week. They would just open up this giant calendar and you could rush in there. And it was like a feeding frenzy. You could like grab the hours as long as they were available and make your own schedule. So if you were the first one in there, you could get whatever you wanted. And if you waited even 5 minutes sometimes, you would be like fighting over the scraps, taking an 11 p.m. to midnight shift or waking up at 7 a.m. and taking like half an hour before you got to rush off to class. So I had weeks where I was able to go in there and get the schedule I wanted. And I had weeks where I had to pick up scraps. And you had to work at least 10 hours. So sometimes it's like 3 half-an-hour shifts at different times of the day. So by necessity, literally the first week of my college career, I had to be ridiculously serious about having my calendar in check, because otherwise I wouldn't know when I needed to be at work. There was no remembering it. So I developed a Google Calendar setup that worked really well for me. I used several different calendars, and I kind of split my life into separate calendars. So the way I like to think of this is like your life can be divided into different buckets essentially. So when you're a student, like some of those buckets include classes, part-time jobs, on-campus events, exams. I made exams a different calendar because often at my school, exams were not held in the classroom that the actual class was held in, and they were often at night. So that was like a different thing, and they're all color coded as well. So I could see like, boom, exams coming up this week in bright teal. And every single week, I would just look at my calendar and see what's coming up within the next week, possibly the next 2 weeks in case there's a big exam coming up or some kind of trip or something important that I need to prepare for. And then the other thing is anytime an event comes up, immediately I'd pull up my phone or my laptop and get that thing on the calendar as soon as I can. So when you have an external system that is an accurate reflection of what you actually need to do, and this applies to everything, to your note-taking system, to your to-do list, but especially your calendar, that becomes your central source of truth. And the nice thing about Google Calendar or iCal is they don't forget things. As long as you put the event in there and you have the accurate details, then that's actually the truth. Unlike your brain, who's probably going to think, oh, this interview is at 3:30 p.m. instead of 2:30 p.m. They look at the calendar and realize, nope, it's not. It's 2:30.
Oh, that's so true. Our brains are so bad at that. And they'll remember things at the most inconvenient times, like the moment that you need an item versus the moment you're at the store. We're just so bad at remembering things at the point where we need to have the memory. But you're right. It's foolproof. The electronics do not forget. Even if your power goes down, Google Calendar servers have not gone down. Except that little outage recently, but for the most part.
I remember because all my YouTuber friends were freaking out, like, YouTube's down. Is this the end of our careers? And I do want to put this out here right at the beginning. I am a computery person. I went into college to be a computery person, but all of these tenets can be applied to an analog system. Our parents and our grandparents have been using paper planners for years, and there are great systems out there like the bullet journal. There are still daily planners you can go out and buy at Walmart or Target. So if you want to use paper, that's totally fine. It's the underlying principle that you are externalizing the task of remembering what you have to do instead of keeping it in your head. There's this guy named David Allen. He wrote, what did he write? He wrote some very important productivity book, the name
Getting
of which,
Things Done.
Yeah, Getting Things Done. That's what it is. So he once said that your brain is for having ideas, not for holding them. And that's basically how I try to live my life. Once I have an idea, I get it into a trusted external system.
Yes. Oh, you're speaking my language. This makes me so happy. I love Google Calendar. And yes, you're so right to point out that you've got to find a system that works for you, because it is no longer a trusted system if you're not going to look at it and then you're not putting stuff in there. So if you're a paper person trying to use an electronic system and you just don't like it, you're not going to put stuff in there, and then it's no longer useful. So I like that you're giving people permission to use what works for them, because the consistency, it sounds like you've really got this system integrated. Like you were saying, it's a central hub of your day. So if you had a calendar set up, are students looking at that once a day, multiple times a day? How should they be integrating that into their life once they've got it?
So I look at mine once a day. And so I use a habit tracker, and I don't consider a habit tracker to be an essential part of a productivity system, because I don't want to make people feel like they need to use more tools than are necessary, but I get a lot of use out of habit trackers. It's basically just a way for me to don't break the chain, make sure I exercise every day, drink enough water every day. But also the first thing other than wake up on time is check my calendar. Because if I wake up and I don't check my calendar, then I can get blindsided by something. Again, I won't remember. So I need to go look at that system of truth. So I look at my calendar probably 6 a.m. each morning, just check it briefly, note what I have going on, because you can set Google Calendar to remind you, right? You can have it do push notifications. You can have it do emails. That's all well and good, but sometimes you can make choices earlier in the day that can put you in a position where those reminders come not soon enough. For example, we had this interview today at 2:30 p.m. I woke up this morning and I was like, you know what I want to do after my bike ride? I want to go out to a coffee shop on the other side of town and do some writing there. And then I looked at my calendar and I was like, nope, can't do that. Because if I get my half an hour before reminder and I'm 45 minutes away in a coffee shop, then you're dealing with me talking to you in a coffee shop on a bad mic. So there's always that first thing in the morning check, or if you prefer, a right before bed check. The other thing is, like we talked about with the planners, you know how they often say like buy expensive pens because you're not going to want to take notes with like a crappy pen. You know, you want to use tools that don't introduce friction into your life. So again, if Google Calendar is not your jam, use a planner or use iCal or whatever it is. And this goes for anything. Whenever somebody gives you a piece of advice, there is like the specific iteration or the specific configuration of what they have told you either they do or that you should do. But then there's also like the fundamental underlying logical concept. So if I say use Google Calendar, that's like the specific thing. But what I'm actually saying is use a calendar. You know, you could be like my mom and it could be a wall calendar with kittens on it.
It could be.
For her. She's got Post-it notes on her wall calendar and she gets a lot done. She has a very complicated job and she gets it all done on that. So
no judgment, whatever works for you. So, but make sure you've got a calendar in place. And that's such a great thing for students to start doing before they get to campus. And then once they get there, then they've got all the details about their schedule and their due dates, their exams, all of that. They can get that in their calendar. So that's kind of pillar one, is you're getting your calendar in place. And then you mentioned, I think the second one you said was a task list or to-do list. So what's your recommendation for that for students?
So I want to talk about that in a second, but there's one thing that I want to mention before we move on from calendars.
Sure.
This is something that I do, or I guess I did every single semester before the next semester. You're going to get your class schedule when you sign up for classes. So for freshmen going in, this is probably going to happen in June or July if we're talking about fall semester. Once you have that class schedule, go into your calendar and make recurring events for those classes. So don't just say like, oh, you know, the first week of class, I have this class schedule. Set them as recurring until the end of the semester. That way you don't have to worry about it from week to week. You just know this is my rock solid class schedule. I'm good to go. So task manager. People think they can use their calendar as a task manager. You kind of can, but I think there's a fundamental difference between events that you have to go to at a specific time, like this interview or like a class, and tasks that are due at a specific time, but that you have the option to work on anytime before that. So I like to keep those separate. Task manager that I use is called Todoist. There are many others out there. I think the one that I recommend to most students who don't want to pay for anything is Microsoft To Do. It's probably I think it's the most dialed in free one out there, but Todoist is really nice and has some extra bells and whistles. There's TickTick, lots of other ones. I have an article on my site comparing them. But again, it's the whole, I call this quick capture. The moment you are assigned something, the moment your teacher says, hey, you have this gigantic essay on elephants and hippopotamuses, who would win in a fight, due next Thursday, boom, that goes in your task management app, and it's got a due date Thursday. And again, you want to use the life buckets concept here. So the reason I really love Todoist and Microsoft To Do and all these kinds of things is that you can create separate task lists for different areas of your life, such as having one for every single class, maybe having one for any extracurriculars you're in, one for errands and one for groceries. And then when you give them due dates, they will also show up in the special lists, like for today or next 2 weeks. So what that allows you to do is, say you get a syllabus for a class and it's got due dates for the entire semester's assignments. You can get all of those in your task manager, and then they can be safely tucked away in a specific list for that class. They're not going to bug you. It's not going to look like this gargantuan list of tasks. But then when you look at today or look at next 7 days, you're going to see everything in your life that's coming up. So again, the whole concept is stay on top of everything. Make sure nothing slips through the cracks.
That's really good advice, and probably not something any high school students are doing. So this is going to be a new one probably for most college students to have a task list.
Yeah, I mean, I know I had task lists in high school, but they were like sticky notes on my computer again.
Right. I get the sense that it probably wasn't a task app. At least I did not have anything like that as a high school student. So.
Yeah, I think my first one was freshman year of college. Those were the good old days of Wunderlist, but now I'm doing Todoist. So the big thing with task lists, this is not so much an issue with calendars because once a day goes by, you're kind of done. With task lists, they tend to accumulate what I like to call entropy, which is like a general descent into chaos. You're going to have tasks that just don't get done on the due date that you set for them. You know, a lot of times you have due dates that aren't actually hard due dates. Like I've got a task to check my fire extinguishers in the house once every 3 months to make sure they're not expired, so I don't die in a fire someday. And it's not crucial that I actually do that. If I don't check the fire extinguisher on Tuesday like I'm supposed to, the world doesn't end, but I don't check that task off. And if I let things go like that, or if tasks have updates that I don't set, your task management system accumulates a bunch of cruft essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And that contributes to you not wanting to look at it, which makes it so that you don't use it, which means that it falls into disarray. It's no longer your single central source of truth. And once that happens, you just start either relying on your brain again, which doesn't work, or you start putting sticky notes on your fridge or something, and that can get out of hand very easily. So this is something that I think everyone should do for each part of their productivity system, but it's most important for the task manager. Every week there should be a review day. And review day is split into a planning session where you look and see what's coming up in the next week, maybe 2 weeks if you want, and also just a quick run through your system to update or delete or check off anything that doesn't need to be there anymore. That way you're keeping things organized.
That's a great idea, and also really essential, because you're right. The task lists they get old and expired and out of date. And if you don't have a set routine to update them, they're probably going to become something you don't use over time. So
yeah, it's the exact same thing as washing your dishes after you eat dinner each night. You can do that, or you can let them pile up and then have like a 2-hour dishwashing session, which is not my idea of a good time.
I don't think that's anybody's idea of a good time. So definitely. So the calendar, and then I'm curious how you integrate your calendar and your to-do list. So if a student was getting into their day, how are they using those two to sort of allocate their time?
Personally, I just check them both. And my life isn't so fragmented anymore that I really have to worry about this. But when I was in college, I would have a lot of items on my calendar and I would have a lot of things on my to-do list. So the way I did this was I had what I called a multi-tier productivity system, where I had Todoist and I had Google Calendar. But then each day I would just take a piece of notebook paper and I would write events and I'd write tasks. And that was like my daily sheet. And then at the end of the day, I would go back and update things. And that's an extra step. So some people don't like to do that. And some people are just fine looking at the today thing on their task manager, looking at their calendar once, and they can operate off that. But some people like to have like a single thing, like this is all I got to look at for the rest of the day. And that's a nice.
Yeah, like when people will make up one Post-it for the day. Okay, to do today, and then they're going to put those in order that they want to do them, and kind of think about the breaks in the day, or they'll take parts from their task list and put them on the calendar just temporarily, just because that's when they know in the day they're going to get it done. So it sounds like in addition to the weekly review, if you've got a lot going on, students might benefit from also kind of doing a daily planning process as well, or daily review of, okay, what's on my calendar, what's on my task list, when am I going to actually get these things done? Given the constraints of my day. So that sounds really useful.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a separate piece of notebook paper. You can move tasks over to your calendar. Like on a day, there's a concept called time blocking. I don't do it, but it can be pretty useful for students actually, where you look at your calendar, you got all your hard events, and then you find the gaps and you say, all right, well, this gap I'm going to study for my history exam. This gap I'm going to finish that math assignment. This gap I'm going to go to the gym. I did that a few different semesters during my college career, and that worked pretty well.
Yeah, and it depends on the student a lot, I think, and it also depends on how busy you are. I don't know what you found in your life when you've been in more chaotic and less chaotic phases. For me, I find the more that I have going on, the more I'm going to gravitate towards something like a time blocking, because I just don't have that much time. So if I don't think about how I want to use that half hour before the day starts, it's going to just evaporate. So I have to time block when I'm super busy. But if I have all day, it makes sense to just operate off of a list of 4 things I want to get done sometime today, and that totally works. So depends on the person. So maybe this is another one where we fine tune and people just know, okay, you want to be intentional with your time and you want to be checking your systems every day. The way you do that specifically, if it's a separate notebook paper or a Post-it note or adding it to your calendar or time blocking, whatever you do is going to be kind of personal.
Yeah, just know what you got to do today.
That sounds so basic, and yet so many people don't have any idea what they need to do today.
And when you're planning, there's some follow-up questions you can ask yourself, like what tools do I need? So huge common occurrence when I was in college, back before well, before most people knew about Dropbox, knew about Google Drive, stuff like that, everyone kept their assignments on flash drives,
Mhm.
or floppy disks. And huge common occurrence is you leave the floppy disk, you leave the flash drive back at your dorm, and you don't have your assignment to print at the computer lab. So when you're looking at your calendar each morning, you ask yourself, like, what do I need? I guess I didn't mention, well, I guess I'll mention this in the file organization part of this more, but I really recommend having a cloud syncing service like Dropbox or Google Drive, because you can use them for free, unless you're like a video editing student or like somebody working with giant files. Like, you're never going to have to pay for it to hold your
Mhm.
Word documents and such. And then if you're somewhere without your laptop and you need to print something or you need to access something that is in there, boom, you just find a computer lab or use your phone.
That's a great point too about what do I need? Because if it is, I know a lot of textbooks are going digital, but there are still a lot of students who have a paper textbook. And so if you plan to do something during a particular time and you don't have your textbook because it's at your dorm and your dorm is a 20-minute walk from here, not a great plan. So that, again, sounds like a basic question, but there are so many people who don't ask themselves that. And then they can't get the thing done that they need to get done because they don't have the supplies they need. So,
or even a digital textbook. There's a
Mhm.
lot of students that just straight up forget to charge their laptop the night before, and then it's dead in class.
Mhm.
Uh, I was reading the book on Enron and like all that stuff that happened, and I'm at the part right now where they were doing all the California power trading. So I was learning a little bit about how like power grids work, and essentially it's like this very well coordinated dance of timing and preparation. And if that doesn't happen, like, nobody gets power, because
Huh.
all the lines can only have so much throughput at one time. So there has to be like strict timetables and people knowing ahead of time, like well ahead of time, how much power needs to go through lines. It's kind of analogous to being a student, right? Like, all this stuff isn't too hard on its own, but if you mess the timing up, then you find yourself in a spot where you just can't do everything you need to do.
Mhm. And that's especially true when you're trying to balance more and more classes and the workload gets greater. And when you've got those exam weeks where there are 5 different exams on that one week, and if you weren't
Mm-hmm.
planning ahead, you've got a problem. So you definitely reach the limited resource point at that point in time. So I'm really glad we're talking about getting all this in order before you hit your first semester, because it can be daunting, even though it's simple in isolation. You put it all together, it can get pretty hard. So we
Yeah.
talked about calendar, we talked about tasks.
Mm-hmm.
What would be our next step in terms of setting up a productivity system?
Let's talk about file organization.
Mm-hmm.
So there's 2 bits to this. There's digital file organization and there's physical file organization. And more of it's moving to digital. I can't tell you how many friends of mine have desktops littered with files and icons, and it's a mess. You can't even see the pretty picture in the background. This is no way to live. This is the equivalent to having a desk filled with papers. You just don't know where anything is, right? So the great thing about digital file organization systems, and you don't get this as much with paper, you kind of do, I guess, but it's even better, is there's a hierarchical folder hierarchy, right? That's kind of a redundant way to say it, but you can have, one level of folders, and then you can drill into a second level and a third level and as many as you want. So if you use that to your advantage, then you will never not know where a file is.
Mm.
It's the exact same concept all over again, from calendar and to-do list. Have life buckets. So what I think your root folder should be is either Google Drive or a Dropbox installation. I like Google Drive because I think they give you more free storage. It's like 15 gigabytes instead of 2. And then if you do want to pay for it, it's like $2 a month for 100 gigs. With Dropbox, you got to go straight to $10 a month, if I am not out of date on the pricing. But if you install it on a computer, basically anything within that Dropbox or within that Google Drive folder is going to be uploaded to your Drive account in the cloud, and it's going to be synced across any computer you have, which has that program installed. And then you can also get the app on your phone. You have access to everything on your phone as well. So everything that isn't like a huge video file or like, program installation files, but all of your work stuff, all of your personal stuff, I think should go in there. And then from there, you create a list of folders that kind of mirror your life. So for me, I've got a folder for my business, College Info Geek. I've got a folder for college. I've got a folder for work, which was part-time jobs in school. I've got a folder for like learning, which has individual projects like figure skating or guitar, things like that. And then from there, you just drill down. So let's talk about college here. You've got your college folder. Within that, there should be a folder for every year. So freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. Within, the freshman folder, we'll have semester 1, semester 2, or you can just do what I did. Don't even divide it that much. You don't have to get super pedantic. Just a folder for each class. And then from there, like every single class will have all the class documents that you've been given, or you can have individual folders within that class folder for big projects. So if you've got a big group project, final semester project, keep everything in there nice and tidy. And again, as long as you set this up the right way, and then you use your review days to make sure, oh, did I save my final exam in my downloads folder or my BioShock 2 game saves folder for some stupid reason, move it where it needs to go. And again, the system does not incur too much entropy, and you use it.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking about how much easier your life would be if you set this up before you even started your first semester of college classes versus if someone was a sophomore or a junior in college and they're trying to go back retroactively and sort through those download folders and just all the chaos that ensues when you don't keep yourself organized. This is the perfect time. If you've got someone who's a freshman in college, or even if they're in high school, let them know about this, because this part is so useful, especially at the start of a new school year, to just start fresh and clean with those folders set up. It sounds so basic, and yet I can't tell you how many times I'm screen sharing with a student and we're working through something and we're trying to work through this paper or this project or make a plan for something or other, because we do a lot of times, strategically mapping out their time, and they don't know where the thing is. They can't find it. They can't locate it. And so it's, maybe it's here. Maybe it's here. And it wastes so much time, and that's just on one call. So it makes me think, oh my goodness, this is what's happening in the rest of their life if they're this disorganized with the digital files. It can take so much of your time. So I'm really excited you're talking about this. And I'm curious too, do you find that students also need a paper organization system as well? Because I know a lot of colleges are going digital, but is it still valuable to have a paper organization system still?
I think as much as we might intend to go paperless, to embrace the whole digital thing, you're inevitably going to get papers. So there's one or two things you can do. You can digitize all papers, but there are certain papers you want to keep, like your social security card and I don't know, like newspaper clippings. If you were mentioning your high school newspaper or something like this, things you want to hold on to. So digitization, you can get apps like ScanBot or Scannable, or Evernote has a scanner built into it. And then you can digitize those things really easily. You can take a picture with your phone and the app will automatically crop out the paper edges, and sometimes we'll even like up the contrast so it basically looks like a Word document. So I make heavy use of that. I tend to send my digital scans to Evernote, which is my note-taking system. We'll talk about that in a second. But you can also send them to Google Drive or Dropbox or whatever you want. So that's a really good habit to get into, so you kind of keep your paper accumulation down. And then for the papers that you have to keep, then you can just get, I got it right here. Just get yourself a folder box from Walmart and put some hanging file folders in there. Use the provided labels. Again, life buckets. There's going to be things that for whatever reason you just don't digitize. Like, I don't know, I was sent tax returns in the mail for several years. I don't want to sit around digitizing like 50 pages of tax returns. So those just sit in the box. But again, they're in the box, they're in folders, they're labeled, so I know where they are.
Again, so easy if you set that up at the beginning and then you put everything in there. A lot harder if you've got the mountain of papers stacked on your desk and you don't know what it is, and then you've got to go through it later. So kind of akin to that pile of dishes piling up. It's just not fun to sort through that afterwards. So the organization at the beginning, another really useful one to set up if we're in the summer here and you're watching along in the summer. Do yourself a favor, go to the office supply store, grab a file box, and set up what Thomas just said. That's going to save you so much time. So then you mentioned note-taking. What are your recommendations there? Because that's going to be a lot of students' lives they spent in class taking notes.
Lots of notes. Yep. Oh, one final tip on organization for files. Get into this. In addition to that box for home, I like to keep a accordion binder thing in my bag. Well, I did when I was a student and got a lot of handouts. Because you're not carrying that box with you, but you want something where you can temporarily store paper files.
Good thinking.
Maybe you keep them. So, and I like the accordion binders because they give you several folders, but it's one unit. You're not like juggling a bunch of folders in your backpack. Or
That's
you can
good.
go old school and keep a trapper keeper.
Yep, or a binder with pockets or whatever your system is. But I like the idea of having it all in one, because then you aren't trying to grab the right binder and then you pick the wrong one, and then you're at your class, you got the wrong thing. And so it sounds like a really good idea to keep it all together in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, it's just more elegant.
Mm-hmm.
And then for note taking, so the app that I use is Evernote. I've been using Evernote since my freshman year of college. I absolutely love Evernote. There's a lot of them out there. And again, you could do paper note taking. There is actually research out there to show that people who take notes on paper actually retain more of the information. Part of the reason for that is you can type faster than you can handwrite. And when you're typing faster, you are obviously recording more of the material that is presented in class, but at the cost of comprehension. So the way I like to think of it is your brain is kind of split between parsing the syntax, the actual letters, the words, the sounds you're hearing, and translating them into notes. You're essentially becoming an unpaid court stenographer. In fact, you're paying to be a court stenographer. And then there's the side of your brain that is, actually learning in class. So the kids who go into a class and think, I'm going to take notes on literally every single word that is said, or even worse, the ones who are like, I'm going to record the lecture and I'll just listen to it later. It's like, well, what are you spending that hour in class for? You could just be like out mountain biking and send your friend to record the class for you if you're going to wait that hour. Learn it the first time, I say. So I don't think people need to handwrite their notes specifically. I am a digital note taker myself, but you do need to make sure that you're slowing down and taking time to comprehend. Ask yourself, like, do I actually understand what the professor's saying right now? Do I need to raise my hand and ask a question? Or am I so preoccupied with getting every single word that he said down into my note-taking system that I've just totally blazed past the whole question of comprehension right now? So that's like the biggest thing with note-taking. Make sure you're learning. Beyond that, if you want to take notes by hand, a great way to make sure that you never lose them is to, again, digitize them once you're done. So you could use Evernote, you could use Notion, you could use OneNote, whatever you want. OneNote is probably the freest and most full-featured one out there, but I don't like OneNote because their organizational structure just doesn't work for my brain.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Evernote works a little bit better. I don't know what OneNote was thinking with like the weird tab things. And
I have no idea. I've yet to meet someone who thinks it's intuitive, so I don't know.
I've tweeted back and forth the product team. They're like, we'll take your feedback into consideration. And there's some people out there who've like finagled weird systems that get them the organizational structure they want. I don't know. Evernote makes sense in my brain because you have notebook stacks, which contain notebooks, and your notebooks contain notes, and each note has content. So I'm like, cool, notebook stack called classes, and then a notebook for each class. And then all of my notes are in that notebook. And then I can use a tagging system for, say, like textbook notes, lecture notes. I copied and pasted the results from an online quiz I took so I could review my results later on. Quiz results tag. That works really well for me. And again, the big thing with note-taking is you should be able to access it wherever you are. So this is why I like Evernote or any kind of note-taking system that syncs across devices. If I'm on my phone, I need to look something up, then I can look it up. So the reason Evernote is my big recommendation, number one, it has that nice organizational structure. It's not perfect. I wish I could have more levels of hierarchy, like an actual folder system, but it's workable. It's really good for digitization. You can just take out the camera and snap a picture of stuff. And this is better. This is good for things beyond just notes. Example for me, I got a bike lock the other day, and it's a combination lock. So I just snapped a picture in Evernote of the combination, and I can throw the combination away and not leave it on the bike lot for a thief to grab. Anything like that. So for me, Evernote's basically my second brain. Class notes go in there. Song lyrics, if I think of them, business meeting notes, anything that I generate in my head that is content probably goes into Evernote. And in Evernote, I don't use this anywhere else, but in Evernote, I use the actual getting things done system where I have a notebook called Inbox. Specifically, it is called exclamation point inbox. So it goes to the top of the list, and anything goes to inbox by default. All my scanning apps are set up to send things to inbox by default. I'll usually start a note from inbox. And this just saves me the friction of having to go find exactly where something should go right away. I take my notes, and then at the end of the day, I go through whatever's in inbox and just file it into the correct place.
Again, with making sure your system's up to date. I'm thinking about the habit tracker app and how that could be a complement, because it's, file Evernotes and an empty downloads folder, and just making sure that you're keeping up with all these maintenance elements of your system so it doesn't fall apart. I love this idea that you can get these syncable notes. For any parents who are watching this, by the way, if you're in complete overwhelm of right now of all the technology and the systems and all the things that we're talking about, and you don't use any of these, go test them out. They're really useful. These are adult productivity strategies too. This is not just for your teens. So just as a side note, if you don't have these, you may want to test them out. And then this advice, if you share it with your teen, if you don't just have them come watch this video, which is one option, you can say, hey, I tested out this thing today. It seems really cool. I thought you might like it. And then you share, rather than saying, I heard about a thing so you can get more organized, which is going to come across as, I don't think you're organized. Here's a resource, which they're going to promptly ignore. So just a side note, while I was thinking about it, I want to mention that so that parents don't get the wrong feedback from their teen who just says, forget it, I've got it, leave me alone.
I mean, I've got everything in Evernote. Like, I've got a note here with like all the restaurants I like in Denver. I don't remember all that. There's like 100 restaurants in here. I'm taking a trip to LA, so all my flight information, car rental information, hotel information, it's just pasted in there. So I don't have to go digging through my email to find it. Like,
and it's so easy because then it's searchable, and then you can just say LA, and then there you go.
Yep. And I'll bring this up. This isn't as important if you have the organizational structure nailed, but the way that you title things, file names and note names in Evernote, that also is important, because basically you need to think to your future self who's like stressed and harried and doesn't remember exactly what was in the note, but kind of remembers a few fuzzy keywords. Think of what that person is going to be searching for and title your note that way. So for example, I'm going to LA for VidCon. So my LA VidCon note is like 2019 LA VidCon trip. And it's in my traveling notebook, so I could easily just navigate to it. But if I want to search, I'm guaranteed to get it.
It's a great strategy. Okay, so I'm imagining somebody who's listened up to this point they've got their, hopefully, if they're implementing, they've got their calendar set up, they've got their task list set up, they've got their organization systems, and they've got their note-taking system. Is there anything else we're missing that they would really need to be ready to be productive and organized in their fall semester?
I talked about the review day, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we got the review day. We talked a little bit about quick capture, which is involving like using the inbox thing, or even some people like to keep just like a scrap of notebook paper and they write down everything that happens in the day and then they go put it in their system later on. That can work too. If you're not the kind of person who wants to pull out your phone and open the calendar and you just want to write it down, you can do that. But again, if you're doing quick capture, you need to remember to get it back into the main system. And
when you say quick capture, you're talking about just capturing it the moment you hear it, not saying, oh, I'll remember that later, or.
Yeah, you still need to capture it, but some people, they don't want to open up a specific app. They just want to have they just have a sheet of notebook paper. It's like everything that happened today. This assignment came in, this thing is happening next Thursday, and I also got an idea for a video game involving llamas. It's all there, and then at the end of the day, you would put each thing into its respective place.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then the only other thing that I consider, I guess we could talk about Habit Tracker. So you could do Habit Tracker in your task management app by doing recurring dates. So just like a recurring task every single day, drink water, something like that. For me, a Habit Tracker is less a reminding device and more just something like an external boot camp drill instructor, essentially. It has all these psychological tricks that make me more likely to stick with positive habits and not do bad ones. So the tool that I use is called Habitica. And for basically everything in a productivity system, I've got articles on my site listing what I think are the best ones. And we've tried to be pretty considerate about like the kind of things people are going to want. So for example, Habitica is very video gamey, and I grew up playing a lot of video games and RPGs. So that's essentially Habitica. You get a little character every time I say, check my calendar or take care of my plants or go out for a bike ride or eat vegetables. My character gets experience and gear and fun things like that.
If you have a kid who likes video games and you haven't seen this, you have to check this out. It's amazing.
I think it's the funny thing about Habitica is like it's super nerdy in the gaming aspect, but it's also totally free. And for a free habit tracker, it's like the most full-featured one that exists. there's a few out there that have like more slick design, but they often
Mhm.
charge money. Another really good one is Streaks. I don't know,
Mm.
Strides. Strides is my favorite non-video gamey one. But when I log into it every day, I can see, oh, I've checked my calendar 11 days in a row. I've woken up on time 8 days in a row. Read for 20 minutes 10 days in a row. I don't want to break that streak. And then with Inhibitica, I don't want to break the streak because it'll also damage my character, possibly make me die, and I'll lose gear. Those are all these like fun motivational tricks that game designers use. But at the core of it, like when you see that streak number, it's kind of like marking things off on a calendar. You don't want to let it be broken. So a habit tracker is really good for that. And it can be really good for kind of separating all those things you got to do every single day. So you're not gunking up your task manager with it. And if you do want to combine them, TickTick, which is a task manager, that was the only one I know of that actually has a habit tracker built into it.
Oh, interesting.
Very simple, and I don't think it's good enough for my uses, but it does exist. So people who want to like be simple and minimalist with their apps, but actually do want one, that works.
And test these out, everybody. So if you're watching through and you're thinking, oh, I don't know about that, just test it. They're free. It's an app. Go download it, play with it for a couple days, and you're going to see, oh, I love this Habitica thing. I thought it wasn't for me, but it's really pretty cool with this character thing. After all, I like it, even though I wasn't even a game person. Don't ignore it, by the way. If you weren't into video games, it's still really useful. And so
it doesn't require you to do the gamey things. You could literally just check the habits off, and it'll just kind of do its thing in the background. But I like it, and the thing I really like, and this is actually this is a feature that might be worth mentioning. So you can party it with other people, and then when you're in your party, you can do like quests and stuff. And if you don't do your habits, then it will hurt your friends. And I think that's actually the most genius part of it, because when I've had friends in a party, I'm just like, I have to do this. Like, they're not going to forgive me if I make them die. So
that's such great social accountability. What a powerful motivator.
So I think the only thing we haven't talked about is email. And I'm going to be brief with email. The one thing I want to mention here is that people often use their email inbox as a task manager. And I think this is a bad habit to get into, because it eventually lands you with 200 emails in your inbox. It's not specifically a task manager. So what I try to do is practice inbox zero, where if a message is something I may want to reference later but don't need, I archive it. If I don't need it, I delete it. It's like a newsletter. I'll often unsubscribe. And then if it's something that needs a reply or needs an action, you kind of go back to that getting things done methodology. Can I do it within like 2 or 3 minutes? Okay, just do it. If I can't, I'm not leaving it in the inbox. I'm going to create a task in my task manager about it, even if it's just giving a reply, and then I'm going to archive it or maybe snooze it.
That's a great idea. Yeah, I don't think most students do that. I've rarely run into a student who has any idea what I'm talking about when I say, so are you familiar with inbox zero? Blank stare, complete blank stare. So if you're a parent and you're not trying that, by the way, it can save your life. It's amazing. But what a great thing for kids to get into that habit before they get to college too, because I've seen students do things like miss a housing deadline because they didn't see the email about the deadline for registering for housing. And it's all done by email, and kids in high school are not used to checking their email. So they can get into that inbox zero system you just mentioned. I think that could really help them. Even if it's not as cool sounding as some of the other ones, it's really valuable.
Yeah, it's a useful habit to be in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you can set all that up, then you're golden.
Oh, you're going to be in such great shape.
There's not a whole lot else.
Absolutely.
Get sleep, eat well, exercise sometimes.
Put them in your habit tracker, and then join a friend on a quest.
I think the biggest productivity tip of all is just to, take care of your body, because your brain is something that consumes calories and needs fuel. So if it's suffering because you're not giving it the right fuel, or you're not sleeping, or you're not exercising, not getting out and moving, getting sunlight, all these little hacks and systems, they can't support a failed core. So keep the core ticking along.
That is a great point to end on, I think, because that really is foundational to everything. And so I hope this is helpful for everyone. If you need to listen again or watch again, please feel free to do so. This is why we have 48-hour replays, everybody, because that was a lot of information to take in. And if you don't have your note-taking strategies up to to par yet, or you didn't capture all of that in Evernote while we were talking because you didn't know that that app existed, you can go back and watch anytime. Don't even worry about it. We'll have the replay up on the site for 48 hours. Share with other people you know who could benefit from this. As you'll find out if you start following Thomas's videos, he has a lot of strategies for college students, which are fantastic, and also a lot of strategies for adults as well. So if you've been a parent watching this and are maybe thinking, I want to get my life in gear a little bit more, you might actually enjoy a lot of his videos too. So check out his YouTube channel. What else can people do, Thomas, by the way, if they want to follow up with you for just to learn more about what you're up to?
Yeah. So on YouTube, if you just search Thomas Frank, I should come up. There's another guy, but he's much older than me, so he won't look like me. Collegeinfogeek.com. We have worked to make this like the ultimate resource for people wanting to go and self-educate on productivity, on academic success, on college success. Like it's all there. And then a couple of things that you can do if you want to kind of get more involved with the site. I do have a free book called 10 Steps to Earning Awesome Grades While Studying Less. This book has over 1,000 reviews on Amazon. It's, I believe, the highest reviewed study skills book ever written, and it's free. So you can go on Amazon. You could buy the print version if you want, or the audiobook version. But if you go to collegeinfogeek.com/book, you can download the ebook version for free. There's Kindle files, PDFs, and then files for other e-readers for anyone who uses like, I can't even think of any other e-readers, like Calibri maybe. And it's a newsletter opt-in. So if you put in your email and you get the book, you'll be on my newsletter, but you can easily unsubscribe if you want to. Basically everything I do is like, if I sell something, I try to give it a free version as well. So I sell the book on Amazon in print, but it's free on the website. And the other thing is, if you're wanting kind of like a recap of the productivity system part in general, the book does cover that, but I have a course on Skillshare that literally shows me going through the task manager, the calendar, basically everything. I kind of like show my own stuff. And that is at collegeinfogeek.com/courses. There's a link there, which gets you a 2-month free trial on Skillshare. So it's an affiliate link, so I do make a little bit of money on that, but it does give you 2 months to try it out, take the course. It's only an hour long. And then if you don't want to subscribe, you don't have to.
I said to everybody at the beginning, Thomas is a great resource. Now you know what I mean. This is fantastic. You could really, really change your life through following his information. And so thank you again, Thomas, for joining us. This has been fantastic and so useful. So I really appreciate your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you as well.
Thanks everybody for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye.